ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरि ओम। ओम सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। ओम तत्सत्। Last class we completed with the note on upasana, Ishvara upasana as a single most potent abhyasa, practice, sadhana to help qualify oneself for the study of Vedanta, to make oneself the adhikari for Atma Jnana, to make oneself qualified to receive the wisdom about the self. To develop the sadhana chatushtaya, etc. So, the main point I said in Upasana is there are two things here. The main point of Upasana is earning Ishvara's grace, and the second thing is taming the ego principle within the umbrella of the broad spectrum understanding of everything as Ishvara, everything as the divine supreme being. It is the one divine supreme being that exists as everything. Now, this understanding to become instinctive and as a part and parcel of one's way of being at all levels of functioning, to reflect in every level of functioning, that is the benefit of Upasana. Tuning to the truth of the omnipresence of the Supreme Being, Ishvara. Saguna Brahmam, we say. The one who does the five divine actions. So, in this, when it comes to grace, the first point I mentioned was divine grace. So, divine grace is already there in the form of sustaining this universe. The divine grace is what sustains this universe, and as a part of that, our body and mind complex, all the laws of physics and chemistry. So, the divine grace works in two angles. The one aspect is that which provides the body, the organs of action and organs of perception, then the world, the field of experience in which we can experience through our organs of action, and we can relate to through our organs of action and understand through our organs of perception, and have experiences, meaningful experiences and enjoyments, and enjoy the result of our past actions in the form of fulfillment of our desires. This is the pravritti or the worldly grace. Tanu Karana Bhuvana Bhoga. The Lord provides this context of life experience which we may use for satisfying the desires, or we may use for developing detachment and discrimination and all the other qualities that takes us towards the freedom from the struggle and freedom from limitations. Now, that is the another kind of grace, the grace that liberates, the divine grace, anugraha, that takes you out of samsara. The samsara is also anugraha. For a person who does not understand anything other than a comfortable life with few pleasures and good self-image and good pride, honor, etc., that when it is provided, is an act of grace. So when the divine provides a person with all that, is grace. In fact, if we are mature enough, we will also understand the difficulties as grace. The various difficult situations in life are also taken by a upasaka as the divine's grace, because those situations help us to develop the required maturity and take ourselves to the next level, to help us climb to the next level higher, a better level of maturity, a better level of understanding, a better level of spiritual clarity, right? So it helps us to climb that ladder of spiritual maturity, inner growth. Difficult experiences also help us in that way. And the difficult experiences are also equally rewarding because it helps us to recognize the various limitations, both in the things around us and in our ways of functioning, in the choices we make, and we learn to do things in a better way, right? So both comforts and discomforts, both pleasures and pains and difficulties are an act of divine grace. That is the understanding that we need to develop. But until we develop that, we generally say it is the grace that allows us to experience various uh, happy experiences in life, in the form of, through the creation and sustenance of this body, organs, the world, and the enjoyments. The Lord who sustains this field of possibilities. So that is a grace. The other kind of grace is that which helps you to liberate yourself from samsara. The grace that gives you moksha, the grace that takes you towards self-knowledge, helps you on the path, brings you the right guidance at the right time. The Guru, Ishvara Anugraha, manifests as one's Guru in one's life. When you feel that you have met your teacher and then you are learning, and when you are looking for the right kind of guidance, a certain kind of guidance, you get the right kind of guide who gives you the right kind of guidance and takes you along to the next level of maturity. So that event is because of the divine grace. Sadashiva Tattva, they say. The Lord's grace is what comes in front of you as a guide. So now, for this purpose of earning the divine grace, and also to develop a functionally deep understanding of the way this divine exists as everything around us and inside us, the omnipresence of the divine being, the way to understand and appreciate that in our everyday life, in every situation, and to resolve our individual egoistic I and mine and everything within that vision of the Supreme Being or Ishvara. So that these two, to resolve our entire ego structure within Ishvara, and earning of the divine grace required to sustain and help us grow in the path towards spiritual freedom, self-realization, moksha. So for this, the most helpful sadhana is Ishvara Upasana, Ishvara Pranidhana, which is worship of and developing bhakti towards a specific form that represents the divine person, the divine being. What is called as Saguna Brahman, the what who we call as the creator, the ultimate source of everything, from which everything came, by which everything is sustained, into which everything resolves at the end, that supreme being, which is the Jagat Karanam Brahma, or the absolute reality as the God of this creation. To be, there are ways to relate to that, and that is represented in various divine forms. In our tradition, we have the Shanmata through forms. So there are divine forms in the sense of what is called as stula, gross forms. Gross means not in the negative sense. Concrete forms, as a in the form of a divine person. Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, Devi Ambika, Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati, all that, Ganesha, Subramanya, Lord Surya. So all these are the popular standardized Upasana Murtis, the forms through which we can develop a practical, loving, intimate connection with the Supreme Being. So we are very lucky to have that in this tradition. Apart from these form-based upasanas, I am deliberately using the word upasana because I want that to become familiar for us. I can always replace it with the word worship and all that. But it does not cover the profound meaning of upasana. Upasana means sitting near, going near, being near. How being near? Being cognitively near, in consciousness. Basically, our entire conscious field, our entire consciousness, personal consciousness is totally made in tune with the divine consciousness. So we are in tune with the supreme mind. The individual mind is completely in tune with the supreme mind. That is upasana. Yeah, so that is what ultimately the upasana takes you to. What is called Atma Nivedana. So bhakti means to seek, bhaja to seek. So bhakti is a constant flow of a tendency with love towards the divine being, the thought and idea of the divine being, towards the idea of the divine being, a constant flow of the mind along with the ego principle, with the sense of self, a kind of a melting, loving flow of our consciousness in the direction of the idea of the divine being. It is an idea. So when we say in Upasana, we are basically sustaining a one-pointed absorption into an idea about God. There are people who say, when you say God, it is only an idea in your mind. Yes, it is only an idea in the mind. That is not a problem. Now, this idea of divine being and concentration on that and developing a loving connection with that has its own advantages, and it has a huge power and a force. It becomes a huge power and a governing force in our life that not only takes care of our spiritual growth, but it also extends its rays of divine grace in every sphere of life. We may be very smart. A person may be very smart, very well informed, very well educated. But to be at the right place at the right time for the right purpose, that is an act of divine grace. That is not under one's control. And the huge dimension of our unconscious mind is completely not under our control. What we are consciously engaging in is only a tip of the iceberg of our personal consciousness. So, the entire life, the major events of life, the biggest decisions, the emotions, the strongest emotions, all these are driven by the power of the unconscious mind. Now, suffusing this unconscious and the subconscious mind with the energy and the vibrations and the intelligence of the Supreme Being, making this in tune with the Supreme Being, making the subconscious mind in tune with the Supreme Being is what Upasana is all about. Conscious is easy to tune, but the idea of Upasana is you begin with conscious association with God, and we do it in such a way that our entire subconscious is aligned with the divine person that we are worshipping. Okay, this is what is Upasana. Now, we can do Upasana based on forms, like I said, Brahma, like Lord Shiva, Vishnu, Parashakti. Subramanya, Ganesha, and Surya. These are the Shanmatas that our Acharyas have given us. There are also abstract idea-based upasanas, which are called Vidyas. They come in the Upanishads. If one has the right guidance and the right tuning to it, one can explore them. There are also upasanas which are based on understanding. Like for example, you can do that. This prana upasana is there where you are, and also there are upasanas where you meditate on one aspect of. So basically, one aspect of the divine being through a word and its meaning. For sannyasis they don't do form based. They are not required to do any form based upasana. They do omkara upasana. They meditate on Om and its meaning through the teachings of Vedanta. Tad japas tad dartha bhavanam comes in Yoga Sutra. So that is designated for sannyasis, those who follow a renunciant lifestyle, those who don't have many commitments, everyday commitments, etc. That is the rule from the Mantra Shastra, because chanting only Om and meditating on the meaning of the Om is suitable only for the person with the lifestyle of a sannyasi and the commitment of a sannyasi, one who does not have any worldly goals or commitments to attend to. So that is the rule. Similarly, every upasana, you have different shades. So we have to find the correct kind of quality of upasana that is suitable for the individual at that particular point of time, and it can also change. Just because you started with one kind of upasana, it does not mean that all your life you have to do only that. It's not required. So once a certain kind of upasana has reached its logical end, it's like a ladder, and one can move on to the next level or to a different kind that is required for growth at that time. Yeah. For example, in Shakta Upasana, in the worship of the goddess, now that Navaratri is going on, so we have a tradition, Dasamaha Vidya tradition is there. We have Shri Vidya tradition is there. In Shri Vidya, there are different levels. There is, there is this, uh, there is something called as Pravesha, where they are giving you the first mantras. They give you the Ganapati and Bala, Sundari they will give you, or they will give you only Ganapati. Depending on the school you go, they will start with Ganapati, then they will give you Bala Sundari, then they will give you Chandi Navakshari, and then they will give you some other forms, and then they will give you Panchadashi, then they will give you Saubhagya Panchadashi, or then after that Shodashi. So like that, there is a then Mahashodashi. There are different. There is a krama there is a methodology they follow. Similarly, you also have in Shaiva Upasana, you have what is called as Prasada Mantras. One Prasada Mantra, next level Prasada Mantra, next level Ashtakala Prasadam, Shodasakala Prasadam, Vimshadikala Prasadam, etc. It goes in a certain sequence. So like that, you have in every tradition. Surya Upasana, which usually all the people who do Sandhya Vandanam, they do Sandhya Upasana using Gayatri. That is a Upasana. Agar agar Sandhya Upachita, there is a injunction in the Veda. So in the Dharma Shastra, the before sunrise, during midday, before sunset, a person who has undergone the Upanayanam should do Sandhya Vandanam and Gayatri Upasana, which is part of that. There are also small upasanas where you are invoking the divine in a life context, what we call as Anna Upasana. Before we eat the food, we invoke the idea of the divine in the whole process of eating. We tune the whole process of eating with with the idea of divine. We recognize the five pranas as the ones who are consuming the essence of the food. Then we purify the food with some mantras, and then we visualize how the food goes and settles inside us. So the whole process is there with mantras and visualization and thinking and ideas. That's called Anna Upasana, right? Where you are, offering to the five pranas, you are offering the food. It's all an idea. So in Upasana, what we do, basically, there is an experiential matrix, right? That is, there is an object. Let us say there is a there is a stone, or there is a lump of, you take a piece, some turmeric powder, mix it with the water and all that, and make a lump of turmeric powder like a little cone on top of a beetle leaf or ashwatha leaf. Okay? And then you invoke Lord Ganesha in that. And then you invoke the five pranas. So you visualize the presence of a divine being in a receptacle, in a base. So you are superimposing the idea of a higher principle on an ordinary object. We are superimposing the idea of the higher principle of Ishvara on an ordinary object. So that is Upasana, where you do that and then that object becomes divine. It's kind of samskara. Right? The object becomes sanctified, and because of the invocation, if you do it correctly with all the mudras and everything and prana pratishtha and everything, it becomes a live entity. If not, it at least just bhavana. You have many temples where prana pratishtha is not a big deal, but the idol looks very nice, so people develop a certain emotional connection to that. So you use it as a meditative prop. Either you invoke the divine properly technically with all the procedures and prana pratishtha and etc., and then you create a certain intense energetic presence there, which is useful for concentration, and then you worship that and make a connection, and that is becomes a karma, and it has a certain power to invoke a certain divine force in that context. If you can't do that, you use the form. There is a beautiful statue of Krishna made of marble. There are these wonderful statues with nice painting and Krishna in marble, or Lord Shiva, meditating Lord Shiva in a marble. That marble cannot be used for any prana pratishtha. It is useless for that purpose. But it is very beautiful. It is a very good prop for concentration. So you are able to look at that and meditate. And then you are able to visualize and set your mind. It becomes a good prop for concentration on the Lord Shiva. Right? And then you internalize the image and then you bring it in the mind. So basically, you superimpose a higher idea on an ordinary object. Then you involve all your faculties upon that invoked presence. You invoke a presence and then you align yourself completely with that presence and surrender your ego to that presence. This is Upasana. You invoke the presence. So there is a image of, there is a Shri Yantra, let us say, then you invoke the goddess Lalitambika in the Shri Yantra. And then you visualize the goddess Lalitambika according to the meditation form that is recommended in the Shastra, in the Sri Vidya Shastra. Lalita, you have Lalita Sahasranamam. It says Sindhur Aruna Vigraham Trinayanam Manikya Maulispratara Nayaka Shekaram Smidamukim Apina Vakshoruham Bhanibhyam Alipurna Ratta Shashakam Rattotpalam Dibhatim Saumyam Rattakatastha Rattataranam Dhyayet Paramambikam. There is a shloka. So you understand the meaning of the shloka and you visualize the meaning of the shloka while you chant the dhyana shloka, the verse on meditation. You chant the verse on meditation with the visualization of the meaning on the altar where you have invoked the goddess. And then you involve all the five senses. You offer your sense of smell by offering perfume. Then you offer the sense of taste by offering water. Like that, all the five senses are connected with the Panchabhutas. You do a worship. Gandham samarpyami, pushpam samarpyami, all that you do, and then you visualize all the offering. Basically, you are aligning your organs of perception and your organs of action. You are aligning them, and through that, you are aligning your prana and your mind with that divine presence that you have invoked. So your entire being is completely in tune with the goddess who is there in front of you. And then you have a relationship with the goddess. You treat her as a mother or daughter. your lover, or there are different bhavas that are there, depending on how you learned from your teacher or what parampara you come in and all that. So usually Matru Bhava, consider the goddess as your mother, or mother and child, that bhava is there. Or you say that the goddess is everything, you are everything. All that is here is only you. You alone exist, I don't exist. So you completely resolve your any kind of individuality into the presence of the goddess. And you be totally in tune with that. And that is supposed to take you to some kind of a bhava samadhi. Samadhi siddhir ishvara pranidana comes in Yoga Sutra. So staying completely in tune with the presence that you have invoked. And then you, after you surrender yourself completely, then after that you have to do visarjan. You have to take yourself out, and then you have to release the presence back to it from how you invoke back into your heart. You have to absorb the presence from the altar back into your heart. It's called visarjanam. The presence has been projected from your mind, from your heart. So you resolve the presence, you absorb the presence back into your heart after you have performed the external worship. And then you see that her, which is goddess, then you see her as all that is. So when this is repeated every day as a sadhana, as a practice, our entire unconscious mind gets in tune with the goddess. It gets in tune with whatever is the devata that you have invoked, whatever is the divine presence that you have invoked. Our entire unconscious, subconscious, our sense faculties, our instincts, everything are aligned with that. And the divine becomes the motivation for every major decision in life. And it inspires our thoughts. They say in Gayatri, that is Yo Deva Savitaha, that supreme effulgent being in the sun, who is visualized in the sun. Asmakam Dyo Dharmadi Gocharaha, the one who conducts our intellect and the thinking and actions. I invoke his self-effulgent brilliance. Prerye tasya yad bhargaha tad varenyam upasmahe. I tune myself to his worshipful presence, to her worshipful presence. This is it's called Smartha Gayatri. Gayatri mantra's meaning. So through the Gayatri, I cannot chant the Gayatri mantra, it is against the rules. So I am using the Smriti shloka that describes the Gayatri. I am explaining the meaning. So through that meditation, you are tuning to the divine presence that is invoked in the sun. Similarly, you can invoke the divine presence of the goddess in the moon. So there are so many ways. You can also, the Ashtamurtam, the world is called Ashtamurtam, the 5 directions in the sun, Surya, nakshatras, and the mind. So this entire world is seen as God. All that you see here, the 5 elements are seen as different manifestations of the one divine being. That is a form of meditation. That is upasana. So like that, whatever upasana we do, we infuse our entire being with that idea of God. So our entire being should come in tune with that God. That is called ekagrata. So we have this 4 stages of life, right? Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyasa. The recommended 4 stations of life, student life, householder life, the life of a recluse, and then the life of a renunciant. So when a person wants to proceed with, I will interpret it in a way that is relevant for us. When a person wants to proceed with full commitment towards moksha, one has to go through a transition stage from a busy worldly life to a complete renunciant life. The transition process from karma to jnana, they say, from an active goal oriented life to a completely contemplative self knowledge oriented life that is based on total renunciation, there is a transition phase of preparing the mind. So which is called vanaprastha, where you are developing the endurance, where we are developing the sadhana chatushtaya, the 4-fold qualifications, and the central sadhana of vanaprastha, or the central spiritual practice of the transition from worldly life to a completely spiritually committed life. In the sense, what I mean here is a life committed to spiritual freedom. When I say worldly life, that is also a spiritual life in the sense of a dharmic life, a life committed to personal goals without compromising dharma. From that life, when we shift to a life that is completely oriented for freedom from samsara, which is moksha, there is the transition phase where one has to develop what is called ekagrata or one pointedness, where the central aspect of this stage of life, where you are transitioning into a life devoted to moksha. In that process, the central point is yoga. Yoga here means upasana. So originally the word yoga sadhana actually meant upasana. Ishvara upasana is what was called as yoga sadhana. And then all the other things are accessories to that. Usually when we sit for our japa, etc., our worship, our formal ceremonial worship, we do, we generally, you will see the Indian priests, our Vedic priests, they will be knocking their forehead a little bit. Shuklam or Dharmishtam, they will do that. Then they will be holding the nose. Om Bhuho, they will say everybody will hold the nose. So that is pranayama. So, and then they will sit in a proper asana, they will purify the place and asana and all that. So there is asana, pranayama, and then withdrawal of the senses by visualization of the deity, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, all that is there. So the entire upasana is nothing but yoga, Raja Yoga. Upasana and Raja Yoga are actually synonymous. Of course, because there are so many types of upasanas, there are so many types of meditations, both that are supportive to upasana or alternative to upasana. The sage Patanjali brought all of them together in one text, like a compendium. It's like he brought it all like a different pearls strung together in the one purpose of yoga. So that is the Yoga Sutra, talks about all that. And there are different Yoga Upanishads we talk about. Nada Upasana is there, where you can invoke through the power of pranayama, we can invoke the divine sounds inside the nadis, and you concentrate on them by meditating on those internal sounds as Om. And then the sounds change their quality, the Sanadam they say. And based on the Nada Upasana, you can tune and get into a form of absorption, inner absorption called Laya. And the mind and the prana become one and rise up. And you get one pointedness. Laya Yoga, Kundalini, Upasana, all that is there. So if we read the commentary of Bhaskaracharya for Lalita Sahasranama, the 1,000 names of Lalita, when you read Sri Bhaskaracharya's commentary, he gives various meanings for the Sri Vidya mantra. He says how the Devi can be meditated upon as this world, how the Devi can be meditated upon as the form representing the meaning of the Mahavakyas, Tattvamasi, etc. How the Devi can be meditated in the form of Kundalini, Shakti Kutam, Magdya Kutam, Vakbhava Kutam, connected with the different stages of Kundalini and Prana. Like this, we have different meditations on the goddess. Yeah? And the same logic, if you look at the different traditions of worshipping the divine in different forms and different ways, there is an underlying logic to all that. All of them follow the same kind of procedure, the same logic. I was very surprised to find a similar logic in the traditions, in the meditative traditions that had developed in different among the mystics in different parts of the world. So I happened to hear about the meditations that are done by what is called as Carpathian mystics in Europe. In Eastern Europe, there are Carpathian mountains where mystic tradition had survived for a long time. Later, it got absorbed into Christianity, but basically, the mysticism is not from Christianity. Mysticism is native to that land. It has developed there. Later, those mystic elements were absorbed into the Christian monastic tradition of Eastern Orthodox called Carpathian mysticism. So they I talked to somebody who was very familiar with that, and they were sharing to me what kind of meditations they do. It is exactly the same logic of Upasana. So, the concept of sustaining an idea of the divine and maybe superimposing it on one of the props that we have in normal experience, using one of our normal everyday experiences, any of our normal everyday experience that is centered on nature as a prop or as adhishtanam or as a, as the receptacle, the vessel on which we sustain that idea and so superimpose that divine idea and sustain it and meditate on it. So that is the fundamental logic which is there in all the mystic traditions, and this is called upasana. This is what is that. And what upasana one can do, we can follow our emotional. My suggestion is that one should follow one's most natural emotional inclination. There will be a certain sustained kind of a emotional involvement or a very instinctive appreciation of one or two forms of the divine that we are exposed to from our childhood. If you happen to have a religious life, you will have a certain natural appreciation for one or two forms more than the other forms that you are exposed to. So you can choose one of that. So that tells about, that comes from the samskara, karma, and all that. That is why, because of these unconscious forces, you are tuned to that. Any form is equally good. It is simply like, when we are choosing a divine form for meditation, for upasana, it is like choosing a browser in the internet. This is an example I always give. You can choose Google Chrome, you can choose, what is that? Edge. You can choose Firefox, Safari, all these browsers. Each browser has its own character, positives, negatives, advantages. And then based on your system and your knowledge, familiarity, right? So if somebody moves from a Windows computer to Mac computer, everything is the other way around. If you are used only to Mac, better to buy a Mac. Otherwise, you have to get used to a new computer, right? So the same way, if you are already used and exposed to, and you have an inclination towards a natural inclination towards certain divine form, then you already have a capital. So you can start there and practice, and then make it a little more systematic, more aligned with the Shastra that talks about that kind of upasana, and refine it a little bit instead of making it crude. Refine it a little bit and convert and create, and convert that devotional involvement into a formal anushtana. To convert your natural inclination to a divine form, from that you have to develop and create and sustain what is called as anushtana. Is a everyday formal devotional meditative exercise where you have a formal altar, you keep like a presence, that is like a divine presence in your home, in your room, or wherever. Find the way that you can sustain. Don't dream too much. Don't we don't have to set very high targets. Set very small targets that you can achieve. First is to have a small altar. Whatever is maintainable, an altar can be maintained even in your hostel room, no matter where you are. Generally they will say the place where you cut the hair is impure. Okay, we go to a salon is considered impure because everybody's hair is cut, and it has a lot of energy mess. So when you go to even if you step 1 foot inside the salon, we have to take bath when we before we act normally in the house. Even before we can drink some water, we are supposed to take a shower, head shower, change the clothes and take a head shower. Okay, so that is usually the rule in very ritualistically strict houses. Now, what will the barber do? The barber has to do upasana. He is a bhakta. He is also equally important to the Lord. The Lord is also equally important for him. Vedanta and self-realization is equally important for him. The divine grace is equally important for the barber as it is for you. I may be a very ritualistically puritanic person who takes bath after going to a saloon, but the barber whose bread and butter is saloon, he is living in the saloon. And you know what the barber does? For him, that knife and the blade and the scissors, all that setup that he has, that is his God. Every traditional barber in India and also in any religious country where the person comes from a religious background, they have an altar. They worship. They first, before the first client, they offer some incense sticks and all that, light a lamp and pray. They take bath and come very clean. And then they pray, beautiful. And then after that, there is a small worship of all the implements which they use for shaving and cutting hair, etc. And after that, whenever they touch the client, they first, they pray to their deity, and then they invoke the deity. They see the client as a form of the Lord, and then they touch the client's head, and they worship. They visualize their divine, their family deity or whatever they are worshiping in the client. They make a small prayer and then they start. Right? Once a woman told me that when she was pregnant, when she went for a delivery, the the doctor has to perform a cesarean. Okay, so before cutting open, the doctor, that doctor was a Christian, so he draws a cross on the belly. 3 times he draws a cross and makes a prayer, and then after that he cuts open. The person told me. No, that is the upasana. So you are superimposing a divine idea on a normal experiential situation where you are invoking grace. That is called nyasa. For example, we say, when we do Sandhya Vandanam, we touch different parts of our body. You touch the cheeks with the thumb. Yogeshvar, Narayana, Madhava, Govinda, Vishnu, Masudna. We touch different parts of the body with different fingertips. There is a procedure. It's called Nyasam. Then there are also purification with invoking the mantra with specific kinds of touch all over the body. Called Anganyasam, Karanyasam. So this is called Nyasa. It is a very ancient practice which is found in many cultures, which is absorbed into even in this monotheistic religions, they have absorbed that from the cultures that existed, from the spiritual mystic traditions that existed before them. They have absorbed it. So there is so the principle is the same. If you go to the Vaishnava Yatis tradition, the Vaishnava tradition, they will make a small a kind of a tattoo of Shanka and Chakra, the conch and the discus, which are the things that Lord Vishnu carries. They will put conch in one shoulder and discus in another shoulder. No, Shanka Chakra. They will put, it's like a tattoo. They will heat up some metal and then they will make this. We call Samashrayanam. It is a form of samskara. It is a form of nyasa, right? Whether it is correct or not, Shastra allows or not, all that is secondary. But the principle is that. So we have all these practices of superimposing the divine idea on a normal situation and thereby elevating that into a divine presence, bringing a divine presence into a situation that helps us to tune to the divine's presence in everything and subjugate our ego principle to the principle of the divine universal order, which is Ishvara. So this is the central thing of Upasana. And one can choose anything. So whatever is familiar is fine. There is no one Upasana is more powerful than the other Upasana. This is another problem we have. Somebody says Shri Vidya is the greatest of Upasana. Another person will say the greatest of Upasanas is Omkara Upasana. All mantras are dissolving in Om. So then it becomes like like which car you are going to buy, which is the best car. Like that, you want to find. There is another yogi who wrote a very famous book, and he said, Kriya Yoga is the rocket path to realization. These are all what we call as Arthavada, exaggerations that help you to be inspired by them. It's marketing, basically. So don't go by. We don't have to take the marketing literally. The marketing is there for us to feel good about it, feel inspired by it, and to motivate us to take up that. But we are not literal. all upasanas are equally good. All upasanas within the Vedic tradition, within the Sanatana Dharma, the Hindu tradition, that has its root in the Vedas, all the upasanas that come under the Vedic tradition are equally good, are equally valid, equally powerful. What makes an upasana click and give its results is how much naturally you are able to tune yourself to it. How much your unconscious and subconscious mind is able to tune to the divine meditation, which is upasana. That is the key point. So, based on that, and one has to do a lot of introspection, some study, discussion with one's spiritual guide. Then one can arrive at that. Maybe some astrology can also help. There are different methods and techniques in astrology that help you find your deity. That is also there. So combining all these factors, one can arrive at the decision of one's upasana and keep a main upasana for the purpose of tuning oneself to the divine. It's called Ishta Devata. In Tibetan tradition, they call it as a idam. So we call it as Ishta Devata. So one can find one's Ishta Devata. One of the things that help us in finding the Ishta Devata, that facilitates the various life situations to take us towards our Ishta Devata and making it easy, is Swadhyaya, studying the different scriptures, listening to discourses, and chanting the generic, this divine shlokas and all that, listening to various shlokas. All those things will help us get closer to our Ishta Devata, will help us to recognize and get closer to our Ishta Devata, will help us to get in touch with the resources that will help us to do upasana of our Ishtadevata. Swadhyaya pratishtayam Ishtadevata samprayogaha. That is a Yoga Sutra. So Swadhyaya takes you to Ishtadevata. So we have recommendations and solutions for all these wonderful things. It is all there in the Shastra. So let us make Shastra and Ishvara Upasana, Shastra study and Ishvara Upasana as the central point of our way of life, around which we align every aspect of our life. Then the path to freedom is going to open. There is no choice. The path to freedom has to open, and the divine has no choice but to take us towards both our worldly goals and the bhukti and mukti, both the satisfaction of our worldly goals and helping us develop the maturity required for the pursuit of moksha as the only goal. Okay. So with this, the discussion can begin on question answers. The discourse is over. So now I will wait, and if anybody has any questions regarding this or from the previous class, anything that is waiting to be discussed, you may present your question. We have around 8 minutes. Usually nobody asks questions, so that's why I didn't give much time, but we have time. So let us see who asks.
Namaste, Yogeshwarji. I have a question.
Namaste. Yes.
So I guess my question is with regards to the connection between yoga and Vedanta. I understand the purpose of yoga is to prepare the mind for Vedanta, but I guess I'm not clear if at the end of yoga, whenever that comes for a practitioner, the person is supposed to, one of the goals being realizing the truth of the self, the non-dual self, and all of that. If one already already one realizes it through yoga, then why is there a need of Vedanta to study it further if you've already
No. The
experienced it?
yoga, I think it was not, it didn't get conveyed to you properly. Yoga will not give self-realization. Yoga will only prepare the mind. And yoga will help to internalize the knowledge of Vedanta. What we call as nididhyasana. Yoga takes a form of nididhyasana. When a person is exposed to self-knowledge, once you come to jnana, The process of yoga takes the process of nididhyasana or helping one establish in the knowledge. See, yoga is a process of the mind. Okay,
Okay.
it transforms the it is like taking a shower. You clean, you feel, you go out, you feel dirty and all that. You come home, take a shower, wash your hands and everything, and then wear fresh clothes. You are ready to have your food. Then the experience of eating and then going to bed, the experience of sleep is smoother, correct? Similarly, yoga purifies the mind and makes the mind free from the various addictions it has, thereby making the mind available for the true meaning of the teachings of Vedanta. Yoga is an accessory to knowledge. Now, yoga can be an accessory to knowledge, self knowledge, or knowledge of various actions also. Yoga can be an accessory to effective action. Yoga can be an accessory to dharma. Dharma, in the sense, whatever is your work. If you want to be very efficient in your profession, yoga helps you. So, you don't understand Vedanta, but you can still practice yoga to develop a sharp and a healthy mind and a very objective, realistic attitude that helps you to whatever duties you have to perform, whatever career you are pursuing, whatever goals you are pursuing, you will be very effective in that. And you will have a very mature approach to everything, and you will have a very stable mind. It's like, I think I have told this, it's like sharpening the knife, like that. Yoga makes your mind a loyal, useful, effective instrument for whatever pursuit you are doing as an individual. That's all yoga is. The end of yoga is basically samadhi. The samadhi of simple, still mind is not self realization, it will not remove the ignorance. Ignorance is removed only by jnana, not by yoga. And yoga only prepares us. So I hope I answered the question.
Okay, yes, I will think about it and follow up
No,
if I have.
right now, what is the uh, hesitation or the gap you have right now after listening to what I said?
Uh, the gap I have, I perhaps I have not learned fully yet, so I should wait. But the I'm thinking
Just
of
tell me what you feel.
the Sutra 1.3, where the you reside in the knowledge of the self. I think Tadadrashti Swarupe. Yes.
Tadadrashti Swarupe Avasthanam. You now, when you say Tadadrashti Swarupe Avasthanam, you are experiencing your true nature. Here it means basically samadhi without the coloring of the mind. But when the mind comes back, see, this is a dualistic experience. So when you say the self, for example, in Vedanta, it is Tattvamasi. Okay.
Okay. Yes.
You are that. Okay. That Tvam Pada, what they say, you, the word, the meaning of the word you, there are two meanings. One is the individual, the egoistic individual that you are, the jiva, and the implied meaning is the pure consciousness, which is the witness of the three states, which is the pure consciousness without the association with the mind. Now, we have to see, when you see it as yoga darshana, there is no concept of supreme Brahman in yoga. There is only Purusha and Prakriti. It comes from Sankhya. So when you see through the eyes of yoga darshana, you are experiencing your Swarupa. But when you see from the wisdom of Vedanta, it is a limited thing. It is not your Swarupa actually. It is only the pure consciousness which is experienced in Samadhi, which is called Jagrata Sushupti, that does not remove the ignorance which is in the Buddhi. The experience of duality is not negated. The duality experience is not resolved in the vision of the one universal truth. So that is not available. That is the limitation of Yoga Darshana.
Okay,
That
I
is
think
what
that.
is. If you read the comment, when you study Vedanta properly, you will see in Brahma Sutras they dismiss yoga, they dismiss Sankhya, and they dismiss yoga. The goal of yoga, whatever yoga proposes as the ultimate goal, cannot be the ultimate goal. That is the whole discussion. What
Okay,
yoga calls as Purusha, the Purusha is the Bhokta. Purusha is the enjoyer but not the doer. But in Vedanta, Atma is neither the doer nor the enjoyer. It's a very subtle point that one gets only after a lot of study. So basically, yoga is dismissed as invalid. The goal, the definition of moksha, whatever yoga calls as Swarupa Avastha, cannot be moksha. That is the point. It only says you are experiencing your true nature. For example, it is something like sleep, but it is individualized consciousness. That is when the buddhi starts functioning again, the buddhi is not completely dismissed. The sense of individuality is not resolved because there is still duality in experience. And what does Upanishad say? As long as there is a second entity, so long the fear does not leave the person. As long as there is a second entity, so long there is fear. So as long as there is a second entity called Prakriti, there is going to be fear. As long as there is another Purusha, there is going to be fear. So when we go into the Yoga Darshana and the Vedanta Darshana, and then we study properly there and we analyze, there is an ontological problem in the whole Yoga Sutra's concept itself. So we should not extend the Yoga Sutra too much into the realm of moksha, but we treat Yoga Sutra only as a darshana where it is pointing us to sadhana. So uh, Vedantins do not consider Yoga Sutra as the text for moksha. We consider Yoga Sutra only as a text for sadhana. You understand?
yes, thank you.
Yeah. So we invalidate yoga and we validate Vedanta. So because Yoga Sutra is a smriti. Smriti means it's a composed text. Okay. So whenever there is a contradiction between what the smriti says with what the shruti or the Veda or the Upanishad says, we have to take the side of the Veda, the Upanishad, and interpret the smriti accordingly. Because shruti or Veda is the higher pramana than smriti. So as long as there are many purushas, so long the concept of the moksha does not come into picture. Because shruti or the Upanishad says as long as there is a second entity, so long there is fear. You understand?
Yes, fear uh, of what specifically though? This,
See, this aspect needs study. Now, I cannot
okay,
explain this fully right now because it is a
okay,
very elaborate discussion and it is a very
okay,
technical point.
okay.
So, for this, the refutation of Yoga Darshana from the point of view of Vedanta for the purpose of moksha is discussed in the Yoga Sutra and all the other bhashyas and various other texts. One has to go through that in order to understand this. But basically, the point is this: yoga should not be taken as a Vedantin. I will say yoga should not be taken as the vision of yoga is not the vision of moksha that is given by the Upanishad. Whatever is the result that yoga promises is a very useful condition that can be like the what you may call it as the first liberation before the actual liberation. That is how I understand it, and this is how I put it. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. There is a question in the chat. Is there any difference between individual and personality, though both are part of the. Uh, for our discussion, there is no difference. I include personality, like you can call an individual as the base. If you consider individual as the bread, the personality is the topping. the butter or the jam you put on top of it. The personality is constructed on the individual. Individual includes the personality. Personality, an individual can have various personalities, and all the personalities are centered on one individual. And that individual is a result of the power of ignorance. Avarana Shakti makes one feel as the individual. I hope it answered the question.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. With this, I will conclude the class. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat.
Henry, thank you.